Nightmare on Elm Street. The 1984 American slasher classic. The one that started it all. When it comes to these films, this one's my favorite, but I do like 1, 2, 3, and 4. 4 is a guilty pleasure for me. New Nightmare is okay, but those are basically my favorites. Nightmare on Elm Street, written and directed by Wes Craven. Rest in peace, Wes Craven. You are still the man, still the legend. Great horror director and writer. When it comes to a villain like Freddy Krueger, very different from the others. He doesn't wear a mask. He actually talks. He's funny. He says whatever's on his mind. He likes to curse. He has an amazing laugh. Like, you know, I love Leprechaun's laugh. I love Chucky's laugh, but Freddy's got a great laugh. Played by Robert Englund, the legend himself. I mean, nobody can play Freddy. They already tried that. Jackie Earle Haley. Nothing against that guy. He's a great actor, but you cannot do it. It will not work. Robert Englund breathes Freddy. You understand that? He moves like when he moves, he's Freddy. When he eats, he's Freddy. When he sleeps, he's Freddy. When he walks, he's Freddy. Anything he does, he created that character himself the way, you know, Wes imagined it. But Robert Englund is the one who portrayed the character the way he portrayed it, and so that's what we have. But he's very unique. He, you know, his weapon of choice is the razor glove, which is odd because it's a weapon that was made, and it's not like your typical knife, which most slashers have, like knives, kitchen knives, machetes, axes, well, chainsaws. And, you know, this is something that Freddy made. A glove and then welded on some knives as fingers. Pretty awesome. This is God. Tina, watch this. Is my finger supposed to fall off and stuff's supposed to... Don't work. But anyway, fantastic movie. You got a really good cast in this. So like I said, Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger. You got John Saxon as Lieutenant Don Thompson, who plays the father of Nancy in this. And I know John Saxon from Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee. You know, that's one of my favorite martial arts movies of all time. But you got Heather Langenkamp, who plays the main girl in this. She plays Nancy Thompson. Kind of a strong female character. Johnny Depp in his film debut, and probably one of the most memorable death scenes ever. He plays Glenn, which is Nancy's boyfriend in this movie. Marge Thompson, played by Ronnie Blakely, who's the mother. And then you got Tina, who's played by Amanda Weiss. I think I'm probably butchering these names, but Tina, in my opinion, has the best death scene, for sure. Rod Lane, played by Nick Corey. And the teacher in this movie is played by Lynn Shay. And you know Lynn Shay from the Insidious films. You know, she was in Kingpin. She's in a lot of movies. But, yeah, that was kind of cool that she's in this movie. It's produced by Robert Shea. Music by Charles Bernstein. And this movie definitely has some memorable music. I love it. It's creepy. Especially, you know, the stuff with like the little girls singing, you know, 1, 2, Freddy's coming for you, things like that. Like, you know, down the line with the sequels and stuff, you see the girls jumping rope, and that's always been like a creepy thing with me. And, you know, a lot of people will say, you know, when I was younger, I was always afraid of Freddy. Like, I'd always have nightmares about Freddy. I never did. I always thought Freddy was cool. The ones that I had nightmares about were, well, it was mostly Jason, because that was the series I watched a lot more than this series. Friday the 13th is my favorite series. But yeah, I never had dreams about or nightmares about Freddy Krueger. Had a budget of like $1.8 million, and it made $25.5 million. And Wes Craven didn't even he actually didn't even want, so to say, a sequel. When he shot this, he basically wanted it to be its own film. But it was very, very successful, well received by critics, and so then started spawning the sequels. And I'm glad they made Freddy's Revenge, because that's a great movie. Like, I mean, honestly, that is a dark film, the second movie. Very, very dark Freddy. I love that one. But basically the plot of this movie is you have 4 teenagers who are stalked by a burnt killer with a razor glove, and he stalks them in their dreams. So while they're sleeping, they're dreaming, he's in their dreams, and at first they're unaware of what's going on, because no one really believes what's happening, but they start to realize that when you get killed in your dreams, you get killed for real, which is a really interesting concept. And the parents have a dark secret about the character Freddy. There's something that the parents aren't saying or don't want to say about Freddy Krueger himself. But the idea of this movie was where Wes Craven, he always looked up things like articles and things about real life people having dreams and dying in their dreams. There's actually, I think, from an LA Times article from the 1970s, there was a group of Asian refugees or something like that. And they actually died in their sleep from having nightmares. And they called it like Asian death syndrome or something like that. There were other instances, but he was like really fascinated with that fact. And if you think about it, like, you know how like when you're dreaming and then like you fall off a cliff, and let's say you're falling, there's the ground, and you usually wake up before you hit the ground. Like you're about to hit and you're like, ah! Well, they say like if you actually hit the ground, you're dead. I mean, you wouldn't know anyway because you're dreaming, but I'm saying like, there's that kind of concept, like people are having nightmares and they actually die. I mean, that would be like, oh my God, there's so much trauma there. It would be crazy. The thing is, this is what they tried in the remake. This movie, Freddy was originally supposed to be a child molester, but Wes Craven didn't want that kind of stuff on his hands to, I think people would lash out at him for that, and I'm surprised they didn't do all that for the remake. The remake, they did that. Freddy was more like a child molester. But that's what they wanted for Freddy originally, but then they called him the Springwood Slasher, a child murderer instead. And I'm glad they did that, because the whole child molesting thing, like, it's just... Freddy, he's not like a pervert. Okay, he's the guy who jokes around with you and pretty much kills you, messes with you in his dreams. I mean, yeah, he does stuff to women, but it's not like, I'd rather him. I think he's more scarier if he were to kill kids. I mean, that's crazy. If you think about it, that's like a really crazy thing. I think that makes him scarier. In my opinion, it makes him, yeah, I mean, how could you do that to kids? But the name Freddy Krueger, Wes Craven came up with that because in his youth, he was bullied by a kid named Fred Krueger, which was interesting. So that's how he came up with the bully, or with the name Freddy Krueger, was because he was bullied by a kid named Fred Krueger. And what's interesting too, the villain from Last House on the Left, the original, his name was Krug, which is short for Krueger. So he used that too. That's kind of interesting. The colored sweater that Freddy wears was inspired from DC Comics' Plastic Man. I guess that's where he got the idea, but then he decided to color it red and green because something about, red and... they talk about like how certain colors together equals like traumatic experiences and just different things like that. He thought that red and green would actually be traumatizing in some way. There were actually 2 Freddy gloves made. There was one called the Hero Glove, which was used in scenes to cut things. And then there was the other glove, which was called the Stunt Glove, which was actually made to where, people wouldn't get hurt. I mean, it probably, just made of plastic or whatever, was there just for show. That was kind of cool. I'm not even sure if you can get an actual... I know there's replicas out there, but I want a real one. Like, I want a real sharp Freddy glove. And I know you can get them. I know you can. I used to have a pretty good one. It wasn't like real steel or anything like that, but it made noise when you would do that. This is just, of course, the cheapo one. What's also interesting about this movie is Robert Englund was not the first person they were going to have as Freddy. David Warner was actually scheduled to be Freddy, but he dropped the role because of scheduling conflicts. So we were going to have probably David Warner to... I mean, he did makeup tests and stuff like that, but it was just the scheduling issue. So they got Robert Englund. Thank God, because Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. He's amazing. So there are a lot of interesting things about this movie that makes it great. It makes it what it is today. But I think it's so fascinating about people getting killed in their dreams and then they get killed for real. And my absolute favorite scene in this is when Tina she's getting dragged around the room. She's floating up in the air and stuff. She gets dragged up the wall, up on the ceiling. Freddy, he slices her down, the stomach area and chest. And she's just like this, and she starts rolling all over the place. The ceiling, there's blood everywhere. And she's yelling for her boyfriend on the ceiling, upside down, while Rod's down there, be like, Tina, no! Like this, and there's blood everywhere, and she just falls. Because in the dream, Freddy's chasing her down an alley. He finally gets to her, and, she's struggling in real life, but that's actually Freddy doing it. I mean, that was an amazing scene, the way they executed it. It's amazing. That is my favorite death scene in pretty much almost the whole series. I love the Tina scene, and when she's in the school and in that bag and she gets drugged down the hall, that was amazing. Johnny Depp's death scene is iconic, but still, I don't think it's the best. It's definitely not the best. But Freddy, Freddy's very dark in this. He hardly says anything. I mean, he laughs a lot, but when he does talk, it's really awesome. And, I don't really care for the Freddy that just does nothing but jokes around, with these cheesy one-liners. And I just think it got to be just a little too much. They kind of shied away from what made him scary. And like I said in part 2, he definitely ups the ante in that one. But Nancy, she tries to figure out a way. After some of her friends die, like she starts to figure out a way to go into the dream world, grab Freddy, and bring him out into the real world. And it makes sense because bringing him out into the real world, he can get hurt. And so that's her plan. And so she has like Glenn try to watch her and stuff, and she tries to pull him into the real world, and she sets up traps and things like that. It's a really cool confrontation between her and Freddy, and makes her a strong female character. She's definitely awesome, and a lot of fans were glad when she came back for part 3. That was really cool. But yeah, this movie, it just has an amazing story and amazing characters. I love them, and the soundtrack and the score and all that's great. Just altogether, one of the most iconic films horror films of all time, definitely. Wes Craven really knows his stuff, man. He really knew how to execute films, and you know, put on film what's on his mind, and do it that way. He was so good. I love just about every one of Wes Craven's films, just about. So, if I had to rate this movie, I would give Nightmare on Elm Street a 9 out of 10, for sure. It's definitely not my favorite horror film of all time. Like I've stated, The Shining is my favorite horror film of all time. And I gave the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the original, a 10 out of 10. Because that movie is a masterpiece to me. And The Shining will probably receive the same score. But Nightmare on Elm Street, just a step behind, in my opinion. But it's still great. So anyway, guys, thank you for watching my review of A Nightmare on Elm Street 1984. I hope you guys enjoyed it.